Hi, friends, and welcome to 15241 Today Talk. Hey, and by the way, Linda Dudzinski, our coordinating producer, has told me that there are some people in Upper St. Clair that are not in the 15241 area code or zip code. What is that? Zip code, right? And so our apologies. We want everyone that's in Upper St. Clair to feel the connection that Jim and I have towards our former Upper St. Clair residents, now that Jim and I both no longer live in the district. Anyways, Joe DeMar is our guest, and Jim, you handle the introductions, if you would, sir.
Well, Joe and I have known each other a long time. He's as thin as he is now. He used to be a robust football player at Slippery Rock. And we've sparred and got along and did it all during my career, if you can believe that I sparred with any administrator. But, I know that's tough. But anyhow, Joe, speaking of Upper St. Clair in the magazine, I was reading about you being named a Champion of Learning Award winner.
Well, I want to thank all of you for inviting me here. This is wonderful, and I appreciate the opportunity.
Well, you're a natural guest. You've been at, how long you been in the school district now?
You know, ironically, you say that. I was just talking to a person that handles some finances for us, and this is my 26th year in Upper St. Clair, and I cannot believe it. I had the numbers wrong. It was funny. We had a little debate about it. I said, I've been here, in education 33 years. He said, no, Joe, 34. And I said, no, you're wrong. And he looked it all up, and I missed a year somewhere along the line, but... Yeah, I've been in education now. This is my 34th year, and I've been at Upper St. Clair. I'm on 26 years.
And 17, is that right, as the principal?
It's been 18, yeah.
18.
Yeah, I was just shocked. It's been a long, long time.
Well,
that's just at Fort Couch. I've been a principal the whole time I've been here, but
yes. Yeah,
18 years at Fort Couch.
Well, when you get to 40 years, call me and.
Yeah, I don't know about that, Coach. That's a long ways away.
Well, talk about this award. Dr. Razzo nominated you, and
yeah, he and Dr. Saritsky nominated me for that Champions of Learning Award, and it was through the AIU, and it was an award that was supposed to be held downtown, and obviously the COVID struck and so forth. They postponed it, but I was really fortunate to have won that award. I'm sure there was plenty of candidates. We didn't get to meet anybody from the award, but I know that my assistant principal, Erin Peterson, she also helped write the application, so I was definitely honored to receive that.
What, talk a little bit about the criteria. What did they emphasize?
They focused on what have you done to help the learning process within your school or institution? What have you changed? What are the makeups, whether it be of the team or the teachers, and what were you looking for when you hired a person? And what was the culture that you built within the district? And I think all of those particular characteristics are what helped me win that award.
When was that announced?
It was announced in mid-December. So they did it virtually, and it was exciting. You went online, and then they said all the awards from there. It was cute. It was cute. I even got my parents, who were a little older, to log on. It was kind of funny from them. So
I can relate to the senior citizens. Do you like, you must like the middle school level.
I worked at the high school, obviously, with you for those 8 years that we had been there, and I really, truly enjoyed that. I really liked working with Dr. Kushner, and I thought we had a good time, and, when you're younger, you just go through the process and so forth. Then all of a sudden, you branch out on your own, and then you're totally in charge, which is a big difference, and you know that from being a head coach for so many years. It's easy to be the assistant, because you can always say, well, that was, my idea would have been, but when you're the actual person that has the responsibility, it changes a little of the dynamics on how you feel, how you get up, how you go to work. But I did have an opportunity to go back to the high school at one point from some of the movements that we've had with other administrators. And I just enjoyed Fort Couch. And I think the biggest part about being at Fort Couch, when I first got there, after that first year, we had such a large number of teachers retire. And I was able to hire people that I thought would work well in the district, and obviously they have worked well based on the awards that they've won, within the Schools to Watch and Blue Ribbon Awards and all of the different accolades. So I just felt that it was the right place for me, and the high school is our flagship, and there's the big bullseye on the high school. So you really do have to want to be there. And I did enjoy my time, but I always look at it and say that 99% of all the kids that graduate the high school, they got to come through the fort.
Well, from what I understand, you've done a marvelous job over there, and I hope it continues. How often do you have to hire a teacher, for instance?
We had that large influx of teachers the first 2 or 3 years I was there, and then since then it's been 1 or 2 depending on what happens.
Do you get the final say, or?
Well, I've worked for a lot of superintendents, so they each have their own particular way of doing things. When Dr. Lombardo was here, he wanted to see 3 candidates, and then you had to send 3 candidates down to him, and he'd select one, and then he'd talk with you about it. Dr. O'Toole wanted 2 candidates, and then we'd send down 1. So it's changed over time. And then Dr. Razzo wants to see the final candidate at this point with Dr. Saritsky, and then they either confirm or deny or ask you your reasonings with it. So I think we vetted out a lot of the candidates, and a lot of the kids coming out of school these days obviously they're very intelligent, high QPAs, and a lot of them are prepared. But I think we've started that process. And just going back real quick to the middle school, I have just a quick funny story that I thought you'd appreciate. When I first got to the high school, and I had, a couple friends, or middle school, I had a couple friends at the high school, and I thought, these people and I, we're really good friends. I get an opening here, they're going to want to come back. And I remember calling a friend, Ron Klein was his name. He taught chemistry at the high school and so forth. He'd been there for probably 40 years, I think, pretty close. And I called him, I said, hey, I have a science opening here. And he said, where? I said, Fort Couch. I said, why don't you come on over? It's a great place, it's a lot of fun. We're building a different culture here with different people. And he said to me on the phone, he said, Joe, are you crazy? He said, I wouldn't work with middle school kids if you paid me double, he said. So I learned right away that it takes a certain calling to want to be with that 12 to 14-year-old child. And I think that's been the biggest difference that I've learned. That, you look for people that are patient enough to work with that age, yet they still have the ability to teach them, to prepare them for the high school. So that was one big story I thought was kind of funny with working at the middle school to the high school.
Joe, at what age did you decide you wanted to be an educator, and what's the best part about being an educator?
Well, when I went through high school, actually, I first wanted to be a police officer, if you can believe that, which I did do quite a bit of when I first started being an assistant principal. I then realized that through time that maybe that wasn't the area I wanted to go. I did like coaching, and I did like school. I liked the whole process of it. I liked the management part of it. I liked the academic piece and how everything kind of melt together. But I had a teacher. He was actually a Bethel Park resident who taught me. His name was Bill Valalick, who taught me biology. It was the only advanced course I had ever taken all my life, period. And I did well in biology, and I wanted to study science, and I did. And from there, I wanted to get into education. And I thought it would be something that I'd be able to go at and work with people and kids. And it manifested itself to Upper St. Clair.
And what is it that you like so much about the position?
I think the interaction with people and working with them to help solve a problem. And I think that throughout my time in St. Clair, we've always had, and problems are our own problems, of course, whether we're building a new high school, we built the new middle school, or working through a student that has trouble getting up in the morning, or parents that are reaching out that need help with a child that may have an IEP or a 504 service agreement, that they need that little extra-ness to get them over the hump, to work with the teacher, and then to get the teachers to understand, look, just because you may have a child that does X, Y, and Z, this child may be a little different, that we might need to help them along the way. And I think opening up and being open-minded to all situations is what kind of drove me to do that, to help and bridge the gap between the kids, the teachers, the parents, the community, and then bring us all in one.
How challenging is it to make sure that as an administrator and principal of a school that you're out of your office and in the hallway enough to interface with teachers and students?
It is challenging. I agree with you, Lanny. It's one of those situations where you have to make an effort to get up and get out. And I think that the last year has been obviously really different because we've had so many Zoom calls and you're always on the computer having these particular calls. But you just have to shut the computer down and get out and about. And that's one thing that the high school I did enjoy with, because there was always something going on at the high school. The middle school we're still a little self-contained, but at the high school there was always something going on. I mean, every single day. And I can remember when we used to have pep rallies at the high school, the old-fashioned pep rallies that were actually fun at the time. I loved those days. The band would come down the hall. I thought that was just great, and I know we've changed and partially for the good, but it was fun doing a lot of those different things. But you have to make it a conscious effort to get out and about. There's no doubt about it.
Knowing you like to get out and about.
I do. I prefer that.
Yeah.
I prefer that. I mean, there's a lot of people that love the true academics of academia and the nitty-gritty of the curriculum and instruction. And I think that that's good for a lot of people, but you also need others to make sure that everything works.
In your 18 years as the principal at Fort Couch, my question is, do you change the teaching process or what is emphasized? Has that changed, or at the middle school is it pretty fixed as far as reading, writing, and arithmetic?
I think the basics are the same. I think we always try new practices, whether it's incorporated through, Charlotte Danielson was a big thing back in, a couple years ago that we instituted a lot of the different practices from her. I know that we've done some things with some IB initiatives that we've kind of infused. And then we just take Marzano was another big educator's name that we've thrown in there, that we've tried to use some practices within the scope of it. But as I mentioned, those curriculum and instruction people, they always try to add an element or two. And then with the infusion of the Chromebooks and the iPads that we've had in the last 5 years, there's always a new learning. Now we have Canvas, and from Canvas we went to Focus. And so I think we are evolving constantly within the true academic sense, and then you're infusing it with your computer elements of being able to turn in all of your homework now on the Chromebook, which is something that the three of us never did. We always had to write it down, or you could submit it possibly or print it out, but now everything's done on the Chromebook and sent right to the teachers.
That's amazing.
How well have the people at Fort Couch dealt with COVID?
I think initially we were all a little apprehensive, like everybody else in the world. But when we finally came back and we have the desk shields and we saw the sanitizer that we had, I think that the people realized that we can get through this. We distanced ourselves as much as we could within the classrooms, and then we're always distanced in the cafeteria and the LGIs and so forth. And I think that, we did have a few teachers that just said, what, I'm just going to take a break on this. I'm not sure I can do it or want to do it right now. And I think that's okay for them. And it gave some new people an opportunity to come in and shine. I can think of two people right now that came in that were this was their first job. They were right out of college, and there was no way they were going to get hired in a normal setting. There were no openings, and the districts really weren't hiring. Budgets are still tight, and it gave them an opportunity, and they're really shining. And I think it's no different than that analogy with sports, of which the two of you were so involved with, where you bring that person up from the minors, or that guy that all of a sudden gets hurt, and you bring in the next person, and next time you know, they're the superstar. So I think it's something that has really helped us in a sense, where we have like a group of teachers probably in every building that we can mention one or two that are ready to go if somebody does choose to retire.
What do you think your students have learned about themselves through this pandemic?
I think the majority of them have learned resiliency. I really feel that they've been able to come into school. They wear their masks. They wash their hands when they have to do the before the lunch and then after the lunches, gym classes and so forth. They use the sanitizers, and I think they've realized that they can get through this. They see the teachers doing their jobs, and then that we are giving the kids the opportunity to kind of work through this particular COVID process. And I think overall they've done well. That doesn't mean that the mask hasn't been down a little bit, or that this child didn't put his desk shield up for a period of time, but the teachers have corrected them, worked with the kids, and the kids have been very, very compliant. And I'm really happy and proud of the kids for doing that. I mean, as we mentioned earlier, they're 12 to 14 years old, and if anybody has a real a trick on how to teach 12 and 14-year-olds, would all love to hear it, because, any one particular day, the child can be off to this side or off to that side, and, I have children at the school right now that are over 6'4", and I have kids right now that are barely 5 foot tall. So the middle school is a unique place, but I think our kids have definitely adjusted well.
Do you think, I asked Dr. Razzo this question earlier, but do you think there are some things we'll never go back to, or some things that will stay with us because of the pandemic? Like a mask. Do you think there'll be people that will always choose to wear a mask?
That's a great question, Coach. I would probably say yes. There'll probably be some that may choose to wear the mask continually. I personally think we'll probably carry these masks over in the beginning of the year, and I don't see how we wouldn't at this point. I mean, the kids aren't really going to be vaccinated from what I've heard on TV and on the news, and even from some of the leading doctors. But at the end of the day, isn't it better to be safe than sorry? And whether you agree or disagree, and whether you are, I just think it's something that if you have it and you feel comfortable with it, it doesn't really hurt anybody else. So let's just move forward until those that are doing the actual studies, the scientists I'm referring to, are the ones that are telling us that now we can be this way or that way. But I think we're heading in the right direction. I really do.
I get the feeling kids will be vaccinated sooner than what was originally predicted.
Mm-hmm. I mean, let's hope if they want to do that, sure.
Yeah.
My sense is that there are new theories that are always popping up in education. Is that true? And how challenging is it to be able to stay true to what you've always felt were the issues that drove education, and yet still look for those new ideas?
Well, you're definitely right, Lanny. I think that we've always tried to maintain, at Fort Couch in particular, the middle school philosophy of education. So we always try to put the children together as a team and make them feel connected. We never want to raise one up by lowering another. I think it's important that we treat them all with dignity and respect, and we make sure that their voices are heard so that we can help educate them through whatever processes that they're going through. And I'm going to use sports as another analogy. If you'd go back to the beginning of the middle school, we weren't even supposed to keep score at a basketball or a football game. And now we have, maybe some new coaches and so forth. They want the score of the games publicized, and they want to make a big deal and want to throw a big party with it. And some of those things are okay, but if we look at the middle school itself, we want to make sure that we get the kids developed through, whether it be the math class or whether it's through the basketball team. I think it's important that we continue to help those kids along with their skills. I mean, no one goes from 8th grade to the pros, or no one goes from 8th grade to NASA. They have to go through that 9th through 12th grade years in order for them to be fully developed to go on to college or to go on to whatever they want to do from their particular endeavor. But I think that we can't always rest on our laurels either, because I think the education is dynamic in the sense where we need to be moving forward. Even if the idea within the new practice is not ideal, we would at least try it. We can improvise it, adapt it, and then overcome to whatever that situation may be.
Is it scary for students every time they change buildings, or more so when they make that move from middle school to high school?
Well, I have a theory on that, and this is just my opinion. I think it's the boogeyman theory. That's how I call it. That if you tell a kid about the boogeyman when they're young, they're then going to believe there's a boogeyman as they move through life. But if you don't tell them about it, they'll never know. They'll just think they're going to another school. But the answer to your question is yes. There is a lot of angst about going from one building to the next.
Is that to say that there are some people then that are telling the kids that there is the boogeyman?
I think there is, but that's just me. And I think that we have to stop that in a sense, where just because you're moving from 5th grade or 6th grade to 7th grade, technically it's just a building in a sense. I mean, there are a few nuances that change the particular the physical layout of the building and some of the classes, but at the end of the day, you're still going to be with teachers, and you're still going to be with the same kids and the same friends. And I think it just takes a little bit of time. I think the high school probably has it the worst. When our 8th graders moved to the high school, we always hear, well, now it really counts. Well, I think it counted in kindergarten, because if you didn't learn your ABCs then, by the time you're a freshman, you're way behind, aren't you? So I think that it's a slow progression, but I think it's one in a progression where we should just, I think, look at it from an excited point of view. And I think it's exciting to move from building to building to building. Working in 3 different buildings here in the district, each of them has their own pluses, and I think it's an awesome experience to go from 6th grade to 7th, and then from 8th to 9, and then by the time they're finished, they graduate as seniors.
You have 2 children, so you've dealt with young people as a parent and as an educator. And I asked you before about coming out of your office and being in the halls. What sense do you have about the bus culture as it relates to education?
I don't follow the bus culture.
Yeah, I mean, as a principal, is that part of your concern as well? Is that what is the bus doing to impact the development or having positive and negative effects on students?
I mean...
You mean like riding the bus?
Yeah, riding the bus, yeah.
I mean, I think that there are many different aspects to riding that school bus. I mean, you can avoid maybe the kid or two that is acting up, or you could partake in it, or you could move to the front or the back. I mean, I don't know if the bus is as much of an issue as it has been, because we do have cameras on the bus now. So I think that's been something in the last few years that have really helped. But if you go back 10 or 15 years, I mean, the bus was a short bus ride compared to others, and I think that the children can or cannot get involved to whatever level that they wanted, to be honest.
What percentage of kids ride the bus?
Oh, I don't know, Coach. That's right now it's kind of hard because we have a lot of students being dropped off. If I go back,
is that because parents are concerned because of COVID that
I think they want to minimize. Yeah, they want to minimize the connectedness to the kids on the bus. But in years past, I would say that the buses are probably 85%, 90% full in the morning.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I mean,
in
the morning.
I used to see an awful lot of cars lined up above the stadium to drop.
Yeah, the high school, I can remember.
That bothered me, to be honest, but.
I think, in the last 2 years prior to COVID, we had quite a few kids ride the bus. And don't forget, our school starts a little later. So a lot of our parents are up and out, and they're already, at their jobs and then working. At the end of the day, though, we did have quite a few car riders. And then you throw in some sports, so it was less who actually rode the bus on the way home.
Speaking of sports, why don't you tell us a little bit about your high school athletic career?
It seems like a long time ago, but I know where Coach is going with this, but it's hard to believe, and even for myself, that, I did play college football, and I played football through high school. Thought I was good until I got to college, and then you realize that everybody in college is good. And I don't think everybody realizes the level of athlete once you finally get out of high school. And although I did go to Carlington High School, it was AA ball at the time, and it was a great experience. And then I went on to play at Slippery Rock for a year and realized that, you're just not as good as you think you are a lot of times. And you may have a good attribute here and there, but a lot of these athletes today, they have sports science behind them, and nutrition, and coaches, and different trainers that really help them excel. And I think that that's why we see such tremendous athletes that we have today as compared to, when I played in 83, 84.
Lanny, if we can draw this out of him, it'll be fun. He's a Notre Dame nut, and
my sense is there are quite a few of those in America.
Yeah, but he's one. So anyhow, he got an opportunity to work at Notre Dame's football camp, and it was a little different experience than what he anticipated.
Who was the head coach then?
Bob Davie was the head coach. Lou Holtz had just retired a year or two prior, and Dr. Kushner actually coached Bob Davie. And when I got to the high school, Terry had said, well, I know Bob Davie personally. I'm like, yeah, whatever. I mean, it's St. Clair. Somebody belongs to the country club or knew this, knew that, and I know this congressman. And Terry Kushner walked over, picked up the phone, called into the Notre Dame football office, and spoke directly to Bob Davie. I just couldn't believe it. And a week later, Bob Davie sent us an invitation to come out and spend 5 days at their football camp with high school students, but to live on the Notre Dame campus for a week. And I mean, I was all in. I thought, this is tremendous. I was so excited for the first day. After the first day and all the the excitement of the campus wore off, they stuck us in one of the dorms, in the end of June. It was about 184 degrees, no air conditioning. And for those of you that don't know Terry Kushner, he's an early bird. To say 4 a.m. is early, that'd be shocking. We had to get up at 4 a.m. to get showered, to get dressed for a football practice, to go eat breakfast, to go spend a 12-hour day with high school kids in the heat. It was definitely an experience, let me tell you.
Well, were you always a big Notre Dame, to use his term, nut, or was it this experience that drove you to become an avid fan of the Fighting Irish?
We were big fans in college of Notre Dame. We liked them. They were always on TV at the time, if you remember, so you could always make sure that you got to watch them. And then from there, it just developed into more of a fascination. And then when I got to go and I got to actually, my first game when I had got to go there, if you remember, Bryce Hatch was connected to the university, sold me 2 tickets, and I was sold when I finally got on campus.
It is a great experience.
Yeah.
It is indeed. Let's talk about your family. Your wife's name is Linda?
Yes.
How long have you and Linda been married?
Well, luckily, she's been married to me now for going on 29 years.
Where'd you meet? At Slippery Rock?
Actually, we didn't. Another funny story, I just finished college a couple years back for undergraduate school. I was working as a teacher and trying to go back for my master's in leadership and principalship. And I made the mistake of taking all my money at one time for the summer when you could do that as a teacher. Well, I went to Westminster College for graduate school. They didn't have a payment plan back then. So I had to pay all the money up front and realize that I need to get to work. So as the cliche goes, teachers paint houses in the summer. And I had done a lot of that growing up, odd jobs and so forth. And from there I went over. Her father and mother had called me to go over and give them an estimate. She was there. I had no idea who she was. She was just the woman in the house. And she tells her mother that she thought I was cute, which I agree. And then they hired me, and 5 days later I finished the house and I asked her out.
And the rest is history.
And the rest is history, yeah.
2 daughters. Rachel is down in Charlotte, North Carolina.
Yeah, Rachel's in Charlotte. She just moved a couple weeks ago. She's in marketing right now. Graduate of obviously of the high school, and she went on to Grove City. Spent 4 years at Grove City, and real proud of her. She just turned 23, kind of hard to believe. And then my younger daughter, Rebecca, who's 19, graduated obviously, and now she's down at Gardner-Webb University studying nursing. So she's in her first year nursing program down there. So love my girls, live with all 3 of them.
Kids are wonderful, aren't they?
They are. And especially when they're getting older now. You have more adult conversations with them, and I really enjoy as they've grown up. My wife kind of liked them when they were little, in the sense. Now I find it's definitely a lot of fun seeing how they've grown up and developed.
Before we wrap it up, and to tie it back to Jim pointing out that you won the award, and that's one of a number of reasons why we wanted to have you on the show. In the article, Dr. Razzo says that you have an innate ability to lead. Where's that come from?
Well, it's really kind of him, but I take that as obviously a compliment. I think that you lead based on your experiences, people that aren't willing, or who they're not afraid to take chances, and they're not afraid to be out there in public or in a setting that would cause them to have to make decisions and then be responsible for them. And I think that leadership is responsibility. Whether you make the call of that particular play in the game, or you're looking to make a call in the classroom, or disciplining a student, or trying to help a parent, you have to make those decisions, and having the fortitude of making the decision, then sticking by and living with it, I think helps within the leadership realm.
Well, Joe, thanks very much for being a part of our program. Congratulations to you for winning the award and for your years of dedication to the Upper St. Clair School District. We really appreciate it.
Thank all of you for having me, and I've truly enjoyed Upper St. Clair. And, you know, I always say that Fort Koch is the home of champions. So come visit anytime.
Joe DeMar joining us, the principal at Fort Koch School. Linda Dudzinski is our coordinating producer. Glenn Ward, our director producer on 15241 Today Talk. Thank you.